I kept it short because we were already here and I didn't want to make the audience wait. Um, so, hi everybody, we're here. It's been a while since we've actually been streaming, and I know there were some requests after I did the 3K sub special where I reacted to my first. Well, I guess it was my second ever call-in show. But I messaged Richard and I was like, "Hey, we did one of these shows together. We should go back and watch it." And comment on all the things we may have messed up on, or say, what we would have done differently. I remember last time, like I need. Oh, hey, we got a channel member, Kenzie Page. Thank you for the membership. Greatly appreciate it. I remember I was watching the episode of The Perspective that SR and I were on together, and there were a couple arguments. I remember I was like, we totally missed something that the caller said. I think, Richard, I told you after that one, like how we totally missed a misrepresentation of Schrodinger's cat that the caller mentioned. That was wild. So I have not pre-watched these ahead of this. So how are
I
you
wondered
feeling?
that because I didn't know. In fact, I don't know. I put a link in somewhere earlier advertising this show, and I even mentioned that in. I said I don't know if Ben's actually watched this stuff, but I haven't seen this stuff since it aired, so it is going to be a total surprise for me.
Yeah, I think I watched it like right after it went live. But I hadn't watched it since. So this should be very interesting. And my voice is pretty squeaky. You have a beard.
So if you combine them, you get squeaky beard.
It's squeaky beard, yes. Before we launch into it though, Richard, I know you've been around here before, but can you remind everybody who you are, where they can find you?
Yeah, my name's Richard Gilliver. I am mainly, you'll see me online doing, producing and hosting Talk Heathen. I do have my own channel, but it's not really used for much these days. I'm far too busy. Study religious studies, philosophy, and ethics, with a strong kind of push towards consciousness and the reasons people believe what they believe. Great fun. I've been doing these shows, as we're about to find out, for a long time. I think this is from like 3-4 years ago, Ben, is it? And I think I was hosting The Perspective 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, when I started doing that. So yeah, it's been a great. It's where I first met Ben. We are obviously friends to this day, so it's and we always have a laugh when we get together and stuff. So it's I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, if we weren't friends, I wouldn't be spreading rumors that you're actually Welsh. So it's I don't feel bad. I don't feel bad because we all know that British humor is targeted and it is like that. So I don't feel bad when I pick on British people like that.
Feel bad. No, you shouldn't.
Because I know you do the same thing to me if something came up to where you could. Like yeah. But yeah, this was from 3 years ago, is what it says on there.
Is it 3 years ago? Okay.
3 years ago. I was still a student at the time, and I was squeaky.
Dr. Ben.
And I remember it's funny because I'll comment it when we see it, but like I was so tense the first few times I did shows. Like you can see it in my shoulders. Like I look so stiff, and it is really funny.
Oh man, we're so green. Yeah. I mean, I've been talking to religious people, like doing debates and things, for well over 30 years. But it went through, first it was in person, in real life. Then it was got onto the old forum days on the internet where you just had kind of post forums, and then social media. It wasn't until I think The Perspective was the first call-in show I ever did. So I was really green, and back during the Perspective days. So I'm actually genuinely shitting myself when it comes to watching this.
Yeah, we've grown a lot as people and as debaters since then, and shameless plug as well, because Richard and I are both on Talk Heathen this week, so we're both going to be on the show. Hopefully getting some calls. Like my cold open is calling out preachers, so I want to get. I know they're all probably doing their services, but like I want people to send in, like, if they're gonna claim that they're like the lay people aren't the experts and that they don't have the best arguments, but their pastor does or whoever does, like then have them call, like have them convince the atheist. Like, why are the lay people doing the busy work if their arguments are known to be bad? So
Yeah, I've been. Hopefully, we'll get some calls. I'm just glancing down at my phone because I'm trying to figure out here how
mhm.
many comments I've got on this. Somebody posted a video on TikTok saying, "Name someone." It was a theist with several pictures of Jesus, and the captions, "Name someone more powerful than him. I'll wait." So I responded, and this was yesterday. Anyone that exists in reality.
Yeah,
And
I
I've
mean
had
there
118 replies from it from Christians, like absolutely hammering me for it. So I've made several offers to invite to Call Talk Heathen, and hopefully we'll get some response from that.
Yeah, well, and there even deity is more powerful than Jesus, because if Jesus has the power to only save people that want to be saved by him, that there are plenty of deities that can easily outmatch that.
Yeah, yeah.
But anyway, but there's another show coming, and I'm hoping to get Richard on there soon. So I'm gonna play that promo. But next Saturday we have the premiere of Holy Spirits, and I'm so excited. Um, so definitely, I know y'all have seen this promo so many times, but we're hyping up the thing. So here you go, and then we'll get into it. Oh, did you see Truth Wanted from last night? John from Canada is now saying he's an atheist.
I
Oh,
did indeed see it. Yeah,
I did not see that.
I did.
Dang. Yeah, so that's something we can comment on at some point. But here you go, just so I show this to y'all.
And for the non-Lord did not say to the people, Amen, for he is not holy. Repeat after me. For he is not holy.
For he is not holy.
Amen. Cross yourself.
My name's Secular Rarity. I'm drinking an apple cider, and we're talking about the time that Jacob wrestled God.
And I'm going to tell you the story of Adam and Eve, but I now live in Phoenix and I don't have any friends, so I'm going to tell it to you as though I'm spilling tea. I'm going to tell you this story as though we're getting together for brunch and I'm just spilling hot goss that I've been waiting to tell you.
I genuinely cannot wait for that show. I'm really looking forward to it.
I'm so excited. There's so much content, and even I had to filter it down to like just the show content. But if people, I do have a Patreon set up for Holy Spirits now. If you become a patron and eventually a channel member of that show once it gets monetized, you will get unedited footage. So you'll get to see the behind the scenes content, because I spent hours with Secular Rarity waiting for him to get drunk enough to tell the story. And there was a point, because I had him do 2 stories, because he's doing one for that episode for the premiere, and then one for the episode that Richard's going to be on as well, telling Quran stories. And he is like, at the end of that, like we recorded for like over 3 hours, because it was wrangling cats at that point. And like he tells the story, he has like the Quran pulled up in front of him and he's like reading parts of it, and then later he's like, oh, I still have to tell my second story. We're like, no, you already told it. And he's like, oh, are you sure? Like, yeah, you told it. And he could not remember telling
What were
the
you
story.
feeding him?
He was doing a bit of fun stuff backstage. But there's one point too where he just decided to list out all of the birds that he knows, and that happened. So I have some footage that I can use as blackmail now for all these people. They did consent for me to use them, but so for if anyone becomes a patron, you get to see that nonsense on top of the nonsense I'm going to show you with the stories. So I'm super excited.
You do know I'm Scottish and I don't get drunk, don't you? I just drink.
I know. Well, it's gonna have to. You're gonna be drinking way too much, and that's why like Drunk History UK has people drinking 4 bottles of champagne in order to be interesting enough in the story.
There's a drink called Buckfast that's drank in Scotland predominantly by teens. It's not a Scottish drink. It's made by monks in the southwest of England. It's like a fortified wine, and it doesn't get you drunk until you stand up, and then your head is completely sober, but your body's drunk. And if you can sit down and drink it, be drinking it for like 2 hours and just like chatting away to people, and you get up to go to the lavvy or whatever, then your body just starts falling all over, and your head's trying to figure out what's happening to your body because your head's completely sober.
And yes, we're gonna try. We're gonna try to get Richard drunk. But the advantage is with Brits, they're usually funnier sooner, even if they're not completely drunk. So they can act drunk, even if they aren't. And I need to actually come visit you at some point. And I need to. My performance in Bristol, was.
Shall we tell people about that? I know we're supposed to be reviewing this show, but we had this thing where we were supposed to be meeting up, me and Ben. Ben came to visit.
Well, you were out in the middle of nowhere.
I'd gone for my literally my best friend.
Yeah.
She was getting married and I was her best man. So we'd gone on a hen night, a bachelorette party, as you call it over there. But we'd gone way up to Newcastle, and Ben had gone like literally the other end of England, as far on the other end of England.
I was in the south. I was in Bristol and London and Brighton, and that's pretty much it.
So Ben sends me, we're communicating with each other all the way through this, and we were both really, really drunk throughout this entire weekend. Ben sent me a message. It was literally when he'd first got into Britain, and he sent me a message and he said, this is my introduction to Britain. And he sent me a photo of a car on fire or that had been on fire, and a Greg's like sandwich place. And he said, this to me is now forever etched in my mind as what Britain is: burning cars and like Greg's pasties.
Yeah, no, literally on the motorway from the airport, there was a car on fire. That happened. I went to Greg's, a service station Greg's, just standard run-of-the-mill Greg's. I saw Phoebe use driving gloves because Phoebe does that. Yeah, no, it was an experience. And also David Gandy. David Gandy is a thing there, and no one knows who David Gandy is. And that was fun. But anyway, yeah, no, but I do need to. I did get very drunk in Bristol, with Katie Montgomery, and I did get sick all over her car, and that was a great experience. I don't remember most of the night. I remember we went to the park and we had Pim's Cups in the park, and then we went to one pub, and I remember the first beer. I remember part of the second beer. I don't remember anything after that, and then I remember. Next, we were at a different pub that was like for metalheads, and I remember trying to swing dance with everybody. That's what I remember.
And just for reference, everybody, I've still got the text messages that drunk Ben was sending me over that weekend. So if ever there's an opportunity to blackmail, I will definitely be using it.
No, it's definitely a thing, and like at some point, I need to go to Scotland. To defend my name as a Hamilton, even though I'm not a real Scottish Hamilton. But I have a name, so that's something. But anyway, that's all the drunk talk. Yeah. So here's what we're reacting to.
Oh, wow,
today.
look at that face.
Look at that.
The face of a young man.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like you got the beard, and I just looks very stiff.
We invited Ming the Merciless onto the show.
It's great. But yeah, so you ready to get into this first call? And you can let me know if I need to stop at any point.
Okay, go on.
I'm sure we'll be talking over this. But yeah, this would have been my third call-in show ever, I think. So
wait for them to get screened, but there is one in the queue that I know I spoke to personally, wants to talk about Sasquatch. So we've got
Sasquatch.
Wait, where did it go? Where did it go? Okay, I'm going to bring on Jesse. Jesse, you are on with Richard and student Dr. Ben. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you guys?
Very good, thank you. Thank you for calling. Well, that was
So-
dry and fucking humorless one.
I had a sighting about 6 years ago up in the Sierra Nevadas, and I saw two creatures that I still trying to wrap my head around what I saw.
Richard looks so uninterested.
so
Can you
very
describe
good
them?
Go ahead. What?
Oh, sorry. Can you describe them? What you saw?
The male, and I only know he was a male because
It's always
he wasn't erect, but you could definitely tell his male appendage. Was
The
about 12 feet
Sasquatch
tall,
Lily.
Yeah.
4 feet wide at the shoulders, and every
I meant
bit
the
of
shoulders,
1,200
yeah.
pounds. The female was about 7.5 feet tall and about 3 foot wide at the shoulders, and
Can we
at
just
least
pause it
5
one sec?
inches
Hold
Sorry,
on,
I know that
hold
we've
on.
only
Yeah,
just
it's like
started.
because we all know. Hold on, we all know the fact that like he knew it was male and female because of the height and the shoulders, not because he saw Sasquatch tits. It was like definitely a female.
I'm actually more curious as to why your hair looks like a cross between the band Erasure and John Cena at this point.
See, this was the point in my transition where I was in my Mormon hair era, like, and looking back on it, I realized the fact that I'm blonde and have blue eyes and white that I could easily pose as a Mormon. Especially there, like that picture, I could easily pose as a Mormon. I don't think if I claimed to be Mormon, I think people would not. They wouldn't.
Elder
me.
Hamilton does have a certain ring to it.
Yeah. No, but I will never be a Mormon. Will I tell Mormon stories while drunk? Yes, I probably will do that. But no, I will never give up coffee. I will never give up alcohol. I will never believe that Jesus came to America and the Garden of Eden was in Missouri. Like, I will never believe that shit. So but the contrast here, like I look like a young Mormon, a strapping young Mormon, and then you just look angry at life.
There is a weird kind. I don't know what that look was or what was it was attempting to be. I'm not sure, but it was fucking bad.
Yeah, he's like, oh, I'm not ready for this Sasquatch argument. You're probably like, where's Bree at this time? I will have to. I will say though, like the perspective had some of the best like cryptid calls, some of the best like I think there's some of the funnest calls to respond to because it wasn't people trying to preach at you with like these very vague ideas. Like, I mean, you had some of those, but you had people who had a very individual experience and you talk through that one specific thing. And I like that. I like that about cryptid callers. I like that about alien callers, where it's like, this is the scenario. Let's analyze the one scenario instead of like, we're analyzing something that you've never actually experienced.
Yeah, it was great for that. The variety on there was brilliant. I don't know where Ethan picked them up from, but I wish I had that pool of callers because I'd love for some of them to call Talk Heathen.
Oh, I love the cryptid callers. They're so fun. Like we do need more of those.
Okay.
They
So can we put some
like-
context? Can we put some
So
context to
squeaky.
this a little bit? So you're
I
in
hate
the
it.
Sierra Nevadas and you see these two creatures that are very big, and obviously one was male, one was female. What else was going on? What were you doing in the Sierra Nevadas? Kind of
What
tell us the
drugs were you
story a
on,
little
bro?
bit of
Is what I'm
what
subtly
happened.
trying to ask.
Yeah, so a couple of days before, I went to my doctor and I got some bad news from the doctor.
Oh, it's
They
one of
saw
these
something
calls.
on a scan and I was pretty rattled. So I decided to do what I love doing, which is go hiking. So I packed up a bag with water, apples, dog treats, and I grabbed my dog and
Looking
my
back on
pistol
this sounds like a
and headed
troll.
up to the mountains to do a day
I
hike.
don't. I
This-
don't
this
think it's a
sounds like a
troll.
troll.
And I
Roger.
usually try to
Just
head
really
up about
bizarre.
5 a.m.
Yeah,
so
it's
that
very
way I can get
bizarre.
up there right before the sun starts to
I've got
actually
to say,
rise.
whenever I have bad
and
news from
get
the
up there
doctor,
before
first
it
thing I
gets
do
too
is
hot.
throw some apples and dog treats in a bag and go
And-
for a wander.
And go for a walk and go look for Sasquatch. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, Richard, have you seen, I'm guessing you have you seen the Spirit Science Human History movie
I'm not sure. I may have done. I'm not
with
sure.
the cartoon guy that looks like he's covered in patches?
No, no, maybe not. Maybe I haven't.
Oh man. I have on my Patreon, I have the raw footage of SR reacting to it. And it's like an hour. It's an hour of like this supernatural weird stuff. And yeah, don't do that to him. Richard can handle it. I know he can, but Richard, I think Richard would like it. I feel like Richard would like it. Not
I
in,
probably, you know what? Emma Thorne's
Yeah.
posted a video. I think she's posted it today.
yeah.
And I mean, I love Emma. Emma's great, and she was reacting to some video that's, I think it was a cartoon video, Christian cartoon, and it looks hilarious. And I need to see that thing in full. Just not like to react to her or anything on the internet. I just need to see it just to put it on my TV and watch it. I cannot
Yeah.
wait to watch that because it looks insane. I love shit like that.
You need that with Spirit Science. Like I loved how I got SR in the room to watch it, and he's like doing so well in the beginning. He's like, "Oh yeah, this is just bullshit." And the farther it goes on, it just, the guy speaks a million miles a minute. And so it's just smuggling point after point after point, like just constant gish gallop. And so by the end of this hour, SR was just absolutely drained. It was like, no, stop talking. And I feel like, I don't know, I feel like your reaction would just be that this is comedy.
I will watch it. I will have to watch it.
Yeah, it's legit. Miranda Rensberger's on it. It's like, men are from Mars, women are from Lemuria, people used to be giant, and like
Wow.
there are all these like sacred geometries and stuff. It's great.
You can't beat a bit of sacred geometry.
Yeah, no, you'd think it's hilarious. But that's what, like, people like this sound like that, where it's like, yeah, no, I got some bad news. I'm like, I'm gonna pack some apples and some dog treats and like wander out into the woods. That's my thought. Either this is a troll who doesn't actually believe this and is just saying it, or this is like some new ager who it's just like, I'm gonna go meditate in the desert.
I do remember one episode of The Perspective, and I will get back to the video in a minute. I don't want to kind of detract too much, but one episode of The Perspective where we had a guy call up who said that there'd been like a reset or something along those lines, like 300 years ago, and all the buildings in the world were from after that time. And literally the day before, I'd been to visit 1,000-year-old castle. And I was like trying to describe to him, and he wouldn't have any of it. The fact that literally we can literally prove this thing is 1,000 years, he would not have any of it. He seemed to forget that one of the hosts was from a country that was older than 600 years old, and we actually have old buildings here.
Right. Like I know it's foreign for Americans, but there are plenty of countries with older buildings. Like I've been to India, like I've been to the Middle East. Like there are places that have existed for a long time. Yeah, that's hilarious.
We drove up as far as the road could possibly take us, and then I found a dirt road and turned onto that. And when it got to the point where I didn't feel comfortable driving a 2-wheel drive, I pulled over as far as I could and got out and started hiking. And my dog's pretty good. She doesn't usually need a leash. She pretty much stays right by me. And we went up for about 3 miles or so. And it was about 3 hours of hiking. So I guess that was about 3 miles.
Okay, so this is reasonable.
And
That he just like
my
went
dog
for a
alerted
hike.
me to something. And there was this big manzanita bush right in front of us, about 15, 20 feet away. And my dog did something that I've never seen her do before. She, hair standing up on her back, tail went immediately between her legs, and she would not move forward. At first, I thought it was a bear or maybe a wild pig or something like that. So I started hollering in case it was asleep or something. I didn't want to startle it and like come up on it real quick. And all of a sudden, this female thing stands up from behind this bush, and
I should have asked him how he describes the
I got
Bigfoot
my eyes
tits.
locked on it. My dog immediately pisses itself out of fear. I don't know what to do at this point. I know I have my gun, but it doesn't think to myself to, grab it and shoot. We probably, it felt like an eternity standing there looking at each other. And that's when my dog again alerted me that there's something else, and it looks off to the left. And I didn't want to take my eyes off of what was in front of us, but I knew I should if my dog's alerting to it. And I look up the hill, and there's this big.
We let this guy
towering
ramble
black
far too
figure.
long before.
Yeah, we should have cut him off
And it
long
comes
before this.
charging down the hill towards us, and again,
Yeah, big
by
tits.
the size,
Forget
my
Bigfoot, it's big
pistol's not
tits.
going to do anything to it. Not at that distance. It started at about 100 yards away, coming down the hill. Wasn't running, but it was moving quickly, and I just
Wasn't the
curled
bush like
into
30
fetal
foot away a
position on
minute
top of my
ago?
dog.
Yeah.
I was afraid, if this thing's a bear or
How
I
did
don't
we
know
miss
what
that?
it is. I don't want to kill
Right,
my
yeah.
dog.
We clearly should have stopped him earlier.
Okay,
and
so what
asked
did you
that.
do after that? So if you curled up on top of your dog, how did the situation resolve?
So basically, I ended up trying to reposition myself, and my dog took off running. And when I looked up, they were standing next to each other, just staring at me. And eventually, they just turned and walked away. I laid there in
What if
my
he
own
saw
pee
people?
and my dog's
What if
pee for
he saw like 2 homeless people out in like, because if he just went on a hike somewhere, if it was just 2 people, maybe it was just 2 people fucking in the woods. Like, what if he just saw 2 people fucking in the woods and they were confused, and maybe they were like super hairy people, and like maybe they were New Agers fucking in the
New
woods.
Agers known for being super hairy all over the body.
I mean, yeah, like they grow out their hair and stuff. Like it could be like if you were to pick something, like I saw something out there. I went on a hike with my dog. I saw 2 figures who just stood up and like stared at me. My 2 thoughts would be, am I hallucinating, or like are these a couple of people that are, doing something out in the wood? Like because people do that. People do weird shit.
They do,
is it more
but-
likely that it's a pair of Sasquatch staring at you, or is it more likely that these are just humans that wanted to have some fun out in the woods when they thought nobody was watching them?
You've just given me a mental image. My God. You've just given me a mental image of Kelly Laughlin after Bouncy Bouncy just stood there with his member out.
Oh no!
Thanks for that.
Oh no! I did not mean to invoke that. But it's still more likely that that is Kelly and not a Sasquatch.
We should ask him. We were out in the woods one time.
It's like Yeah,
The guy woke up
probability
to you
is
with a
not the
dog and a
person's friend.
gun.
Yeah, even AJ's like, not saying I've done that, but I may have done that before. Yeah, which is more likely, like a cryptid, a pair of cryptids out in the woods, or just people fucking? I think we have an answer here.
Even
And there's
big,
still more
hairy people.
possibilities. Yeah, and there's still more possibilities. That's still only like one option, but I can think of so many other reasons than it's Bigfoot and his wife. But we should not have let him ramble that much. I think if it were now, we would have stopped him way sooner, and we would have asked more questions about like the inconsistencies with the distance and the timing and all that.
About 2 minutes before I had the shakes under control enough to be able to get to my feet. I still don't know what they are. I mean,
can I just ask what, you know? I'm from Britain, and we don't, you know, Britain's very, 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 very small compared to the US. So, what kind of terrain? What time was it? What was the light like? You know, was it heavily forested? Was there just a couple of
How bad did it
bushes
conceal
around
Kelly
and the rest
and
scrubland? Can you talk us through
his
the actual,
partner
Lady Kelly, your surroundings?
having some fun in the woods?
yeah, so it's a heavy forested area. It was probably about 11 o'clock in the morning, 10:30, 11, somewhere around there. We were on a old logging road. I don't think it's
Only
been
people
used
from
anymore,
Birmingham. See Jamie the blind
judging
line
by
there.
its condition, and the trees around there are mostly old growth. And I mean, big old trees and bushes here and there, and it's mostly mountains. There's no one up there. There's no houses up there. There's
Right, thank you.
there's nothing up there.
Thank you. I picked up on something you said earlier, and I
Next.
appreciate the amount of courage it's taken for you to call in and share this story publicly. I really do. So please bear that in mind when I ask this next question. But
That in mind when I tell
you
you you're
said
full of
earlier when you saw the figure coming down the hill, you didn't know what it was. You didn't know if it was a bear or what it was. How have you jumped from that to possibly being Bigfoot? What in your mind has moved from don't know what it is, possibly bear, to Bigfoot?
Bears in our area aren't that big.
Bears
And
don't have tits.
They don't.
He saw
typically
Bigfoot
walk
tits. It's not a bear.
downhill on 2 feet. And bears typically have a long and elongated snout, and this had a human-looking face. It had
Again,
hands
see people from
like
Birmingham.
a person. It had feet.
It's a hippie from Birmingham.
Like a person.
So, besides seeing the forms themselves, was there any other evidence around that they had been there? Did you find tracks? Did you find hair samples? Is there anything else that would signify that their presence happened?
So I did find tracks, 2 sets. The largest were 18 inches in length, about 9 inches in width. The smaller set was about 14 inches by 7. And there was a puddle of blood behind the manzanita bush.
It's Peter Jackson.
Why there was a puddle of blood, I don't know.
So did you
that
you
was
found
great.
all
Yeah,
that
that's like that.
Still more
stuff
likely
after
than
the
Bigfoot.
encounter happened, or did you find that before the encounter happened?
After.
Peter Jackson showing up in the woods
Have you
near
been back
you
to the
is
place
still more
since
likely
this
than
happened?
Bigfoot.
Not by myself. I went up once with someone else, and I mean, I've never seen any other people up there. I've just seen a lot of wildlife.
Okay, so have you seen any? If you saw the tracks during the encounter, you were there the first time. Have you seen any tracks since then? The second time that you went with somebody else, did you find any similar tracks?
Yes, we went up in wintertime and found a set of tracks in the snow.
Okay, and were these
I
tracks?
don't
Did they seem
believe
to
him
look
either.
like a paw, or did they
I-
seem?
I think he's genuine. I think he's genuinely recounting for the first part of the story, but that part, I
Just making
don't. I
shit up.
think he's making that up. I think he's making that up to try and reinforce what he's already said.
Well, yeah, and like looking back, like the line of questioning we're going down is almost a little bit pointless because, like, we already established that this was a hiking trail that people go on. Like, this person was going out with his dog to go hiking. Of course, there's going to be other footprints of people, like other tracks, because it's a hiking trail. Like, it's a high traffic area, I would presume.
Yeah, I mean, it's
I
come off.
didn't narrow
It's
that.
come off a main road and gone onto a dirt track, which leads into a trail.
Yeah. So this is a probably common hiking trail that people use.
Yeah.
And so again, more reasonable that it's just what he saw was like maybe he wasn't in the right mind, maybe he was seeing things differently than accurate. Like maybe this was just a pair of humans, you know, that went off the trail a little bit and were, I don't know, maybe not even fucking, but doing something, just hanging out off the trail a little bit, and then realized they were not as secluded as they thought. Like that can happen, and especially if it's a high trafficked area, even more likely that people would have done that.
We're both so fucking green on this. We needed to interrupt much earlier than we
Oh,
have
yeah.
done.
We let him take a lot of time.
To look more like a human foot? What can you describe the shape? Because I know you described the size of the tracks.
We were trying to be too nice.
So
We should have backed him
they
into a
had
corner.
5 toes, distinct toes, no claws, and they looked like a human footprint, but extremely large. And
Or doing reshoots for The
as far
Hobbit.
as I know, Shaquille O'Neal's not running barefoot in the snow.
But why
Shaquille
do you
O'Neal in
know?
this.
People don't.
Shaquille O'Neal's
barefoot
still
in
more
the
likely
snow.
than Bigfoot.
So I don't know what to make of it, other than it's a human type footprint.
So something that like really stood
in-
out to me in the story, and I totally believe that you had this experience and that this is a meaningful event that happened to you. There is something that stood out though, in that you had mentioned early on that you were given a shocking piece of news from your doctor around that time. How close to the encounter was that appointment with your doctor?
3 days, about 3 days
About 3
before.
days. Because the human brain is very odd, and especially with things related to bad news. Even if it's not anything related to like a terminal disease
I wonder
or
if
anything.
the bad news
as
was
we know
you're
that
doing too many drugs.
we know
and you
that
need to stop it.
things can happen psychologically when you have a terminal diagnosis, but you can have some
You need to stop
psychological
doing meth, bro.
things come up,
Sorry.
even with something that just changes your outlook on the rest of your life. Even a chronic disease can drastically change how you view the world, and it can almost present like grief in a similar way. And we know that the
We're
brain
being
does
so
funny
nice to
things
this
when
guy.
you're grieving.
Unnecessarily
So I'm not
nice, I
saying
think,
that-
actually.
I don't want to say
Yeah.
anything to disregard your experience, but I do want to investigate a little bit of talking through if we have this idea that this might be a Sasquatch or a Bigfoot. I'm going to leave that in as a possibility. So let's think of other potential possibilities that this could be. So
another
if I
possibility. What if
were
these were people
to just
dressed
list
up as
off
Bigfoot
everything
because they were
that I can
shooting
think of,
porn
and Richard and you, the caller, can
in the
help out with
wilderness,
this.
like
Let's
still
kind of
more likely than
brainstorm
Bigfoot.
what else could have caused this experience to happen, and then we can address each one step by step and kind of figure out how we would investigate it further. Does that sound all right?
Okay. Yeah.
So my goal here isn't to necessarily sit here and debunk what you're saying, because we're truth seekers here, right?
No, it is.
If,
That is
if
the
this
goal.
is true, I want to know that it's true. I want
We're
to be
truth
able to communicate
seekers.
effectively with other
Truth
people.
seeker. No,
So
we
the
are
goal
here
here
to
is,
debunk your shit.
if it is true, then going forward into other conversations, we all can have productive conversations about it and effectively communicate the evidence of it. And then on the
Spoiler,
flip side,
I was the
if it turns
producer
out
of that
that there
Bigfoot
might be
porn
a
shoot
more
that they just
reasonable
talked about.
explanation, we can also explore that. So, because I think I speak for Richard as well in saying that if it is true, I would love to be convinced of it. So,
Well, I certainly was.
yeah, I bet, and I don't doubt your experience at all. So I have my handy dandy whiteboard.
I do doubt
here
your experience.
because I'm at my last time I was here, I wasn't at my house, but so let's kind of think through what we got. So we
Ben,
got
you look so baby faced on this video.
Bigfoot.
I do, yeah.
Slash
And you look very
Sasquatch
biker
as
in
an
this,
option.
in this video.
But what else could it be besides that?
Either like
What other
biker or like
possibilities
philosophy bro
can we think of?
Thanks.
with the beard.
Shaq
world's
running around
tallest,
barefoot.
biggest person.
The world's biggest person. So we got the world's biggest person slash
The world's-
Shaquille O'Neal running around barefoot in the snow. Richard is gonna say that. So we got
Still more likely than Bigfoot.
Shaq barefoot. We got biggest person in the world. What else? What other things can we think of?
An unusually large bear for that area.
Okay, we got a large bear.
A large Welshman.
Can we have a large fuck you to go with that?
Any other ideas?
Somehow a gorilla escaped from.
I love
the
how he
zoo
jumps
and
to a
was
fucking
able to
gorilla.
travel.
It's like, he's
Okay.
not being sincere
300
when he
miles
mentions a
up into the
gorilla as the
mountains.
next most likely.
Undetected.
Like, get people just fucking in the woods.
Okay,
Like,
so we got a gorilla. Anything else? Is there anything that you can think of that might
Kelly
cause
Laughlin.
you to misremember
Kelly Laughlin
what had
just
happened?
trying to have fun with a
Because
partner
you said it was
in the
6 years
forest.
ago, right?
Like Kelly
Correct.
found a
So is there
very
anything looking
attractive,
back
you
that-
know,
Because
backdrop,
our
including all
brains
of the
love to
rocks
add
and minerals
details.
that he loves so
The
much.
more we
Almost
think
like,
about something,
I have to bring a
especially,
partner here to enjoy this. with me.
rationalizing something in our heads after it had already happened, it's very easy to go back and say, oh, this might have been connected in this way. And we do that with many things in our lives. But is there a possibility that that might have happened?
No,
No?
Oh,
Why not?
no.
Because I
Hallucination is not a possibility.
wrote down exactly what happened that day.
If you write it down, it's not a hallucination.
Did
in
you
my
write it
journal.
down immediately at the time that it happened, or was it a few hours in between?
A few
You
hours in
heard,
between.
you heard it here, folks.
Okay, can you remember
wrote it down,
kind
it's
of your
not a
heart rate
hallucination.
during the time that it happened?
Oh, I was afraid.
Yeah.
So I would say it was that. I was afraid.
Yeah. So the brain does some funny things when we're under a lot of stress. So is there a possibility that some details might have been missed, or that maybe
Yes,
the
yes,
perception
there
of
is.
the event was more
Huge
exaggerated
possibility.
than what was taking place? Is that a possibility?
The fact that he would admit that a
don't think
gorilla,
so.
that he'd say a gorilla escaped from the zoo before he would admit that he maybe misremembered it,
Right, we
I don't
seem
think
to.
it's
says a lot
possible.
about him, I think.
I'm going to share something with you now. I'm comfortable sharing it with you. I don't need any sympathy. I'll just put I'm that out there. 'cause scared. don't What want am I detract about from to the say? conversation, but I've literally, in this last couple of weeks, just lost my mum. I got the news that's suddenly. It was unexpected. And it took me, I'm still processing it now. I'm still like trying to go through. I still can't actually believe that she's not here anymore. In fact, I was going to call her today. I picked my phone up to call her, and my head just went, well, she's not here anymore. And it takes that amount of time to like come to terms and process, bad news in our brains, as it did today when I picked my phone up to call my mum. It takes us that time to process things. Now, if you're going out 3 days into the mountains and you've already told us categorically that you weren't sure what this thing was, or these two things were.
Not at first. When I first saw it, I wasn't sure what I was seeing, because what I was seeing should not exist.
So what specifically was it that made you jump? We should have pulled him up on that right.
We need
there,
to move on.
because
We
he
need to
changed
move on
his,
shortly.
he
But I
changed
just want
his
to
answer
kind
there.
of get before
Yeah.
you go. What specifically was it that made you jump from I don't know what this is to this is definitively Bigfoot?
That was his big Willie.
Yeah.
When the way I look at it is, when you see something that shouldn't exist and a bear doesn't fit, especially the way it looked. People aren't made that big. Shaquille O'Neal isn't that tall or that wide or that heavy. People don't have feet that big. People don't leave impressions into hardpan. Everything that I saw, only one thing fits with it, and it's something that
That's big.
a lot of people claim exists,
Kelly
but
Waffle.
science doesn't recognize yet.
So with something especially that can be equated to an animal, because even if it has hominid characteristics, that would make it fit in with mammals and with other animals. Why don't we have any of these in captivity?
Just fucking derailing it.
Well, my theories, I have two on that, is I fully believe that our government knows about them.
Oh, government conspiracy. Yep.
Fully
How-
believe
now we're getting
government knows
into
about them.
even more
so if-
exciting areas.
So if the government knows about
Because-
this, how come
So this
how
person
come the
wants
government
to
would
be
be, especially something that's out there in nature, how come, number one, they're able to hide it, and also what would that do for them? What would hiding a species of animal do for them?
Well, do you remember what happened when people found out about an owl in the eastern United States? It shut down the entire logging industry in that part of the world for an owl.
Because
No,
it
you
was
publish
endangered?
this shit and you get
Was it
all
an
the money
endangered owl?
for publishing this shit.
Because it was an endangered owl. So you're talking about a
Think about all the
species
press
that
you get if you actually
has
had a
gone
publication about Bigfoot.
unrecognized by science, which would immediately put it on the endangered species list, because we don't know
So
how many
so
there
hold
are.
on. So how come
Wouldn't that make it
if it's
more
an endangered
public?
species, if
if it
this
was
is
an endangered species?
some kind of creature that is out there that we don't have many of, how come science isn't trying to preserve it?
Exactly.
I think the reason why science doesn't try to preserve it.
We took
is
way too long on
because
this call.
of
Like, I don't know
the
if we had other calls in the queue, but like, we should have hung up on this person, like,
ridicule and
long ago.
the tabooness of it. So
But would they still be ridiculed for it if they were able to capture one in the wild and bring it back into captivity? Or like because that would be pretty clear evidence for me if we had if we had a museum or a zoo or something that had one of these, and we were able to study it, that would be evidence for most of us.
Yeah, I mean, that would be evidence for most of us. I mean, if they just released a body, that would be evidence for most of us. I mean, they do have DNA for it. They do have sightings of it. They do have footprints. They have casts. They have hair samples. They have blood samples.
How come this
Can I just
possibility-
sorry, Ben, I just need to interject here just 1 minute. I think I'm going to say
The
what I'm
hair
about
samples,
to say.
in every case that I know of,
I am
where the
about to say
hair
what I'm
samples
going to
from
say.
around
I'll leave
the
it to
world,
me.
not just the US, from the Yeti in the Himalaya. Every case I know of, the hair samples, skull samples that they've claimed from the Yeti, in every single case, it's turned out to be a species of bear. Every single case that it's actually been tested has turned out to be a species of bear. So, and these are from people who are absolutely convinced that what they saw was a Bigfoot or a Yeti or some other kind of large hominid, unrecognized hominid. And in every single case, so it shows that's definitive evidence that people misremember what they've seen. These people were absolutely convinced, just as you were.
I don't know about every piece of evidence. I mean, the Ketchum DNA.
I didn't say every piece of evidence. I said every air sample that had been tested.
Okay. Well, the Ketchum DNA sample doesn't come back as a bear.
I'm not familiar with that particular case, unfortunately. I'd love to kind of come back at you, but
Richard, you're not
yeah.
familiar
The
with every
Ketchum
single
DNA sample comes back
example that they
as
Bigfoot DNA,
partially unknown.
So, do you think if we have this DNA sample,
partially unknown,
if that
therefore
DNA
Bigfoot.
sample is from something that we've never seen before, is it entirely out of the picture that we wouldn't be able to use that DNA to track it? Because we're really, really good at using DNA to track animals, to track people. I'm confused about how this possibility of it being an unknown species is more likely than we don't have one.
I don't think it is an unknown species. And that's the problem, is I don't believe it's an unknown species. Why in 1965 did the Army Corps of Engineers, when they did a mapping of Washington State, list it as a native animal on their maps?
What?
Why did the U.S. Army do that if it doesn't exist?
Because humans aren't perfect, and sometimes they say funny things.
Full of people shit.
Why would certain states put into their actual laws and make
we're kind of going down another avenue here, which I would absolutely love to talk to you about. But we are running out of time on this call. We need to get to other calls.
Finally, it took us way too long to get to the end of this call.
Either next week or sometime in the future when you can. And let's go down that avenue because we seem to have drifted somewhat from your experience to kind of some kind of grandiose cover up. And I want to explore that with you in much, much more detail on its own, without kind of the Sasquatching getting in the way. So if you can, please call us back in the future. I really appreciate you calling in. It's been absolutely amazing. Sorry, go ahead.
Call back when Brainbug is on, because
Brainbug would love this fucking call.
Teaches about this on their channel quite frequently, and I'm sure this would be an amazing conversation to have.
Why was it out of the perspective?
Yeah,
that,
and I think Brainbug is on next week, so if you could call
on.
back in next week, that'd be
amazing.
I think
there might be a reason for that. I think.
Yeah. It's like why the science calls don't call with me.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your time. We'll speak to you again soon.
I think it's the same reason that people avoid calling to kind of give you medical evidence that God exists, and people avoid calling me with the philosophy stuff and call. There's a regular caller, or there was a regular caller to Talk Heathen, who's jumped ship to AXP after I invited them to call. It's a regular philosophy caller, philosophy bro. Who called the show, and they still call AXP. They haven't called Talk Heathen since I gave them a dressing down for talking shit. I wasn't hosting at the time, and I gave them a dressing down for talking shit and told them to call back when I was on. Both of the hosts who they were talking to acknowledged they weren't philosophy people. And I kind of jumped in and I said, look, you need to call when I'm on. I'm willing to have this conversation with you. Stop talking shit. Call back when I'm on. And they've jumped ship to AXP and they won't call talk either. I think it's the same kind of thing. This was the same kind of thing.
Yeah.
People didn't want to call and talk to Bree because Bree would have demolished their arguments.
Yeah, because Bree knows all of this lore and knows like the stories that people report and what would probably know that specific evidence that this person is citing. Like Bree probably knows where that came from and where that started. So, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm curious about this next call.
Wow, that was Ben. What are your thoughts?
There's a lot to unpack there, and I think that was a very productive discussion for the most part. I think
no, it was not.
that there's a lot we can.
We were being very charitable in saying that. It was not.
That,
it was not productive.
I really appreciate that call. That was a fun call.
Yeah, it was.
We
and
I'd
love
if that everything was
one
fun,
thing I did mean to ask him,
no.
and I'd love him if he's still watching. I'd love him to bring this to the table next week. Is if he had any kind of photos, if he took any photos, or when he went back out with his friends afterwards. Did he go with the intent of seeing this?
Totally
creature
unrelated,
again?
but I'm
And-
so
and did
fucking
he go
glad I've
equipped?
just seen
So he said
Josh's
he saw
name
a
pop up
footprint.
there
Did
because
he
he's one of
take
my
a
best friends
photograph
in
of
the
that
world. I
footprint
love
or,
Josh.
I love
some kind
Josh.
of sample from it. But anyway, are you ready
I
for
haven't
the
seen him in
next
a bit.
call?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Let's go. Okay. We're going to be talking to Joe. Is that right?
Yes, this is Joe.
Okay. What would you like to talk about, Joe?
Well, I've done studying for ufology for about a little bit over 10 years. I just kind of wanted to bring up one of the new things that I was actually researching, which is what I call predator. Now in ET, it's different types that people have talked about. The predator is something new that has come up recently. I know NIDS, which is part of Bigelow's team before. I think they're the ones that actually made it known to the public.
I don't know what the fuck this one's talking
recently,
about.
Jaime Maussan actually covered one of them on video. I believe it was in Mexico City. Now, this predator, basically what it is very interesting. It seems to float. It's kind of like invisible, but you can still see it. Has a little kind of like a Christmas tree type of invisibility, where it have like different
Christmas tree invisible.
different
Christmas
colors
trees are invisible.
illuminating. It's been
Did
captured
all the
in a couple
callers
of
to this
videos, and I'm glad
particular
to share that to
episode
you
of The
guys later
Perspective
on.
just get together behind
Which is
hot
very
dogs and take
interesting.
loads of
This is
smack?
very interesting because it's very different from the standard ET that we have known. And like I said, it was first documented back in the NIDS team that discovered it as a form of appearing and then disappearing in their sites. It's just something that I kind of wanted to bring up.
Do we have any official documentation of this? Any official military documentation of it?
Now, military is very difficult. I mean, the good thing is that Trump passed, when Trump was in office, he passed the coronavirus relief, which is now releasing a lot of these documents that were.
What the fuck?
It's a whole ton of documents, including when Biden passed his in March.
Ben, just
we're
pause
getting
it
more and
here
more
at this
documents.
point, just 1 sec.
No, it's
Right, you're currently in the military. What's your understanding of the military stance on stuff like this? Because I know people who are in kind of roles where they have access to information that other people don't have access to, and they're not allowed to talk about it. What is your understanding of this?
People think the military is, the military is capable of a lot of stuff, but like people think the military is way more polished and put together than it is. Like people barely do their jobs. Like people barely do their fucking jobs. And it's like a lot, like most people's jobs is like behind the scenes admin stuff, or it's like showing up and like making sure that your motor pool is secure and stuff. It's like most people are not doing super high profile stuff. And even if they are, like the mission stuff, most of that is admin work. Like, and sure, you got people that go out there with special forces and rangers and all that stuff, but like the military gets so much credit for like all this stuff, but people who've been in the military know that like most people are not legit in the military. They're just doing a job, and if they're doing their job, they're barely doing their job. They're barely functional. So
Yeah. There's a guy who I'm trying to find out exactly the years he was active. There's a British guy who was in one of the like Department for Defence things in Britain. I think he was active for about 3 or 4 years, but I've just had a quick Google and I can't find him because he shares the same name as a famous footballer. So it's not bringing him up; it's bringing the footballer up instead. His name's Nick Pope. He's quite kind of famous in the UFO community and that kind of thing. He worked for the British intelligence services of one form or another. I don't remember which one it was. And he has literally made a career of using that as this kind of platform to say, you know, I was part of this thing. I have all of this insider knowledge. Yeah. And what it was actually, you know, from what I can gather, exposed to was very, very little stuff, you know, relating to UFOs and things. I think that's, you know, like I said, I know a couple of people who are both on this side of the pond and your side of the pond who have access to information which they're not allowed to share with people in the military. I kind of agree with you that it's kind of disjointed, and people have the little departments which don't talk to the other departments, which don't talk to the other departments. I think a kind of massive military stroke government conspiracy is almost an impossibility to pull off.
Oh yeah, and it's hilarious because like the people who are out there saying like, "Oh, my mission is classified," like all this stuff is classified. Like those are fakes. Like more often than not, if they're saying that what they know is like top secret, if they're telling you that, they're fake. Like, because the people who actually know shit aren't saying anything, and usually that information is minimal. I have to get up for a sec, but do you want me to play it and you can talk about
hit play and we'll
very hard because most of these documents that are documented as far as ETs or UAPs, which is unknown area phenomenon, it's mostly the standard stuff that we're already used to. But as far as this one that's called that I call the Predator, and the only reason we call it that is because
love secular rarity.
It's something that it's camouflaged. It seems to be like a predatorial being. And from what I remember in the NITS team, because this is like the only official, other than Jaime Maussan's videos, this is the only official document that we know.
I don't want to talk over this too much because Ben's not here to stop it. But me is also another cool person who was active in the community and has not been for a while. So a big love to a meet
don't even
as
leave
well.
a trace, kind of like if it's floating, which is very interesting. I mean, the thing is that we know very little about. But it's so interesting because this is a very different type of ET, if it is so.
Joe, can I just
that
jump
we're
back?
Just barely.
Sorry, can I just jump back in a little minute? I didn't quite get a clear answer from you regarding this particular ET. Do we actually have official documentation about this specific ET from the military?
I can't come up with one. I know there might be some out there with the new documentation that are coming up.
So no, then
the trouble of
I'm not trying to be rude or cut you off, but I'm trying to be specific because we need to, you know, when we're talking about something like this, we need to separate potential from what we actually know.
Yeah.
So in this particular case, we don't have any documentation from the military
With the
at present
government,
time.
no. That's the thing, because like I said, we have to find it with the government. I have to look into it and see if I can find it. From what I know, official documentation
Sorry, the
that we
dog's
do
in
have from
the
NIST
other
team.
room and having a blast.
From their team, we do.
What I missed.
About this specific.
I've nailed him down on whether there is specific. For once in this video, we've done something right.
Okay, awesome.
And I nailed him down on whether he had, because he was claiming that there was documentation about these events and things. So I asked him if there was documentation about this specific event that he was referring to, and his answer was, in a very roundabout way, no. We don't have government documentation, military documentation for this specific event.
See, we just needed to warm up with the first guy, and then and then we get here.
Event.
Yes. They're actually the first ones who.
That's documentation you could send to us so that we could have a look at it.
Yes, Infidel, you're watching us watch.
Yeah, it was a part of a Skinwalker Ranch.
I know it's
That's actually where
confusing,
it took place.
Infidel. It was Ben's idea. Blame him.
It's a part of Bigelow's
It's
team,
fun.
which is
I
the
like
NIST
it.
team. I believe it's the National Institute of Discovery and Science.
Right. If you could send us that, I'd really love to have a look at that. So if you could send us that, send that to Ethan, and I promise you I will look at that, because I'm really interested in, my thing is looking
never
at
did
the
send it, by the way.
corroborative evidence, and if there's official documentation, I'd like to, from the government or from the
In
military,
fact,
I'd love to
sorry,
have a
can we
look at
just
that and
pause
see
it 1
specifically
second,
what
because
it
this
is.
leads me onto a completely different rant again. The only person who ever sent anything when requested to the perspective was what's a Brazilian guy? I think he's Brazilian guy called the apologist, who talks about factories in DNA. It was a real big thing on the call-in circuit.
Oh, was it Tangelo, the guy?
Tangelo, that's the guy.
Yeah,
he
absolute shit who doxed trans people and
that's
stuff.
the one. That's the guy. I asked him to send me specifically a paper which demonstrated that where the people who wrote the paper said that cells were like factories. And what he didn't send me a specific paper. I requested him to send it to Ethan for me to review. What he actually did was directly messaged me with it, and he didn't send me the paper. He just sent me his own blog site.
Oh my God.
Which contained loads of papers. Literally, the first paper I pulled up was a paper that spoke about, it was about factories with cells, and it was talking about how using the description of cells as factories was an outdated notion, and we shouldn't be doing anymore. It literally contradicted his entire claim, and it was the first paper I pulled off his blog site. And this is the problem. We've talked about this before, but this is so important. This is the problem when people use and read scientific literature that they're not used to reading. They don't know how to interpret, because very often it ends up contradicting their very own claims.
Oh yeah, all the time. It's hilarious.
Well, I'd also love to know if there's independent sources for this too, such as because of course, if we had some government or military documentation, that's great. But something that, if you have something that is scientifically verifiable, right, it's going to be able to be replicated by private entities as well, and other scientists. Anyone should be able to find the same evidence, correct? So I'd love to see, I mean, as many documents as possible, see where they're coming from, and kind of go from there.
Yeah, and also,
yeah, absolutely.
Sorry, Joe, I just want to pick up on something that you said earlier, because you said this ET, if that's what it is. So, bearing that in mind, why do you come to the conclusion ET? If you're not sure, what is it? that leads you to take that next step to say extraterrestrial?
Yeah, well, see, with Skinwalker Ranch, if anybody who knows Skinwalker Ranch,
Oh no.
there has been a lot of UAP phenomenon, and UAP, and also a lot of different.
Why do these
kinds of
calls,
things
both these
going
calls
on,
that we've listened to
which
today,
is
do
stuff
follow
that,
the
like
same thing?
direwolves.
They start off with the claim, and then they add claim
sightings of
after claim
direwolves and
after
other stuff
claim
like
onto
that.
it as the
Now,
call goes along, and
I
they're
see
pulled
it
up on
in that
certain
way
points.
because I know that we have technology with invisibility. Don't ask me how, but I've been in the military, so I know that exists. Now I say that because I mean it could be.
Sorry, I just need to pick
that's
up on that. I know I keep jumping in quite a lot. I am quite pedantic sometimes. Sorry. The military technology we have is not technically invisibility. It's what it does is it tends to have a camera on the front.
He said we do. We do like I'm very curious about what this guy's job was in the military, because like I'm willing to bet this was like some super lower enlisted, like some private first class, maybe even specialist, like super low ranking military person that's like 17, 18 years old, maybe 19, 20 years old, who thinks that he's hot shit because he's in the military. Like, no, bro, nobody thinks you're hot shit. Like, go back to sweeping the floor, go back to washing your vehicles. Like, people, we know what you do in the military. We know that most people aren't doing hot shit in the military. Like,
it's the uncle of a cousin of the best friend of some like newly enlisted private.
Yeah,
who's heard a story passed on to a story to a story.
Yeah, it's like you have not done anything that cool. Like, I'm willing to guarantee it. You have not done anything that cool.
Front and a camera on the back.
Yeah.
And it takes an image from the back and puts it on the front, so it's actually displacing what the viewer sees. So
That's
it's
really
more like
cool
an illusion,
technology, by the way.
illusion,
It does
as
work.
opposed to
It looks cool.
like what we would class as invisibility.
Yes, of course. Yeah, and I mean it's
cool
it's
shit,
exactly
but it's
what
not
you said. It's
alien
like an
technology.
illusion, and that's what I'm saying. It's,
Earth
it's
technology.
very. I mean, it could be something robotic. It could be something, man-made, I guess. Now, this was covered by scientists when it was with the NITS team, but it's something unknown because, of course, we cannot definitely prove it. We don't have something to actually grab it and actually, say for sure of what it is, and that's why I said it that way, because it could be a speculation of a couple.
You know what, and I take my hat off to you for that, because that is a very, very important thing to do. It's so important to say that I do not know what this is, but the interesting thing is that the kind of the line of difference between your assumptions and what I accept here is that you're taking that extra step and you believe it to be an ET, or at least you appear to believe it to be an ET. And correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't want to put words into your mouth. But I'm very interested in why that extra step is being taken. What separates you taking that extra step from me taking it?
So, I mean, it's like I mentioned, it's because we do not definitely know what it is. I know other than the NITS team, it's Jaime Maussan's private investigation. And I know from what their consensus is, it's an ET. And that's what we think it is. And of course, like I said, it's just something that we don't know for
Evidence
sure.
out the window. Evidence out the window. Evidence out the window. I think it's an ET. So
and I know it
ET.
makes it particularly kind of like scary to some people, because it's almost like an invisibility cloak that it covers itself in.
This person does not have an ounce of critical thinking.
Exciting.
So I have a thought. I mean, this is a little bit of a tangent, but
go on, Ben.
Going back to when you were describing the footprints of these, you described it almost like a dinosaur footprint. So if we're taking the leap and saying that this is an extraterrestrial, how come these extraterrestrials have footprints or anatomical features that are very consistent with creatures that we see on this planet?
And that's very weird. You know, I agree with you, because normally before I even started believing in ETs, I do not believe that they would have features like us or like anything of this earth. It would be completely different to what we're known or used to. Now, why would have that? I have no idea. That's only what's documented and what was told to
So
us
that's
from the
where
news
he's willing
team.
to admit, and I don't know answer, but not
So that's
So
what we
how
have going
come-
off of.
not to the
So
what
how
is
come
this thing
instead
that
of
I've experienced?
exploring that it might be something, just a new species of lizard, of dinosaur, of bird with that kind of footprint, how come we jumped to this is something not of this world that happens to have features like things that we see on this world? How do we make that leap?
Sorry, and can I just
And it's-
interrupt?
and it's-
And sorry, I just need to point
I
out
wish I'd
that I
stop
got cookies is
apologising.
very kind.
Why am I apologising all the time?
And says Bigfoot calls. Secular Rarity $5. Ben and Richard are awesome. Two of the coolest guys out there. He's too kind, creep. Amit Matthew $10. Get the chopper. Sorry, I just needed to interrupt for that.
No problem.
Speak of the devil, I just got a
Um,
message from
You know,
Kelly.
Skinwalker Ranch is one of the probably the most
Did he say
interesting
being in
spot
the
in the
woods with
world,
someone?
and is
No,
very
he did not
confusing
admit to that.
because, like I
Unfortunately.
mentioned, we see everything from dire wolves, from like dinosaur type creatures, to this what we believe is a creature. It's a whole various things that goes on in that ranch, or at least it did in the 1990s. It's hard to say what anything is without knowing what it is, or at least having the body of it. This is only speculation from what the scientists at NITS covered up, and it's very fascinating. Like I said, I mean, where we got the prints and what we've seen, like everything from dinosaurs and dire wolves that are, you know, have not been here for a while, and including UAPs. Actually, I think this new show that came up in the History Channel.
Fucking hell.
I believe it's
That's
called
Hold on, can I stop you for a
lots of
second?
fucking reliable information, the History Channel.
Right?
Wow.
I have a question.
Mhm.
How come all of this wide range of diverse creatures, how come they're all in one location?
Now,
How come we don't see them
from
other
my
places?
research, from my research, well, there's a whole lot to it. I researched quite a bit into this. This area is very interesting because we had fallout from the nuclear sites that were pretty close of radiation. There's also things in the ground which give off a lot of, I believe if I remember it correctly, my illness kind of affects my memory.
Kelly
There's a lot
has
of
been summoned.
plates in the bottom that may mess with the magnetation.
I think
There's a lot of
Miranda's
things going
just
on
filled
there.
him in.
Now, before where there
Kelly,
was,
and missed the
there
first
was
part of
actually
the
people
show.
living
You
there
were
that
the
believed it was
topic
Shermans.
of much conversation.
They reported kind of like ETs, ET craft, UAPs, even taking some of these creatures and kind of like teleporting them out. Now, from what I understand, if I put two and two together, you actually like there's a lot of stuff in here. But
So
from what
how
it seems like something is go ahead.
All right. How come in other places with radiation, how come we don't see the same things happening?
Like I said, there's a lot of stuff here that may take more than an hour to explain. It's
No
very hard
shit.
to say for sure what it is. We're still learning.
we do
So,
have shows
and
every
like-
week.
Like
This
Yeah,
is why
do
I'm
we
not
have,
sober doing this.
evidence that, because here's the thing. So it's very easy to speculate and say that this amount of radiation would cause these mutations and cause these strange creatures to appear. But could we design a study that would determine
why
a causal
aren't
relationship between
healthcare workers
the
turning
radiation
into
or the other factors
all these
involved and
cryptids?
the
Like,
creatures that
why
we're seeing
aren't
there? Is there a way we could
interventional
we could study
radiologists
that?
turning into this? Like the people exposed to this high
Well,
level of
absolutely. I
radiation
think
Well,
it's actually
are not
studied
who you
right
think they
now.
are.
Like I
We've
said,
not opened Marie
with
Curie's
the History
tomb
Channel,
yet. We
they have
don't
their
know
own
what's
team
lying
right now
inside it.
with
Right?
that is studying that. And
Who
from
is
my
this team made
opinion,
up of?
The team.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Who is this team made up of the History Channel? Because the History Channel, let's say, may have a vested interest in getting sensationalist things on the TV to get viewers in. So we could very
Never.
easily say that they
History
may be
Channel is
biased.
100%
So
legit.
who specifically is in this team that the History Channel is getting together? Which areas of expertise? What are the credentials?
Look at that.
Yeah.
Young
I
Richard
I
asking
wish I
those
had my
hard
computer here
questions.
so I can actually kind of give you the names and stuff. But I know one of them was very skeptical as far as this, because he didn't believe any of this stuff. And I forgot if he is. I think he's an astrophysicist. I don't remember his
Okay, the
name.
astrophysicist was skeptical about
I
all
believe it was
that.
Tyler.
Okay.
I don't remember his
Who are
last
the rest
name.
of the people?
But a very, very well-known astrophysicist. He's helping a lot of the other investigators come up with answers on this. Now, like I said, I can only speculate on what I think. I believe that there's something happening
We
which
should
is coming to this time frame, because we're getting stuff from, like I said, dire wolves haven't been around for thousands of years. And I'm guessing that the UAP is appearing and putting them probably back in where they're putting them, because some of the videotapes and video footage that we've seen, they come
Did
out
you
of
just
a
mention
portal
direwolves?
from what we've seen.
I don't know.
And then they exit like in the portal, and the portal may be night,
Portal.
and we're in the daytime.
Ben has
and then
lost
vice versa.
all interest.
And then
Do
the
you know
portal,
what, Joe?
Joe,
Sorry for interrupting again. You've done exactly what the last caller did. And towards the end of the call, just taking it in a really interesting direction, where we could go on for another hour easily, just talking to you.
Yeah, of course.
We do need to move on to the next
Yeah,
call.
it's about time.
Can you phone back, please? Because again, you've touched on so many different interesting aspects that I'd really like to dive
What's
into
happening
deeply.
with my sound?
And again,
don't
next
know.
week we've got Brainbug on. I'm sure they would love to talk to you about the direwolf aspect of it. See, there's so many great hosts on this show, and everyone can bring something different to the table and has a different area of expertise.
It really
So
was.
I'd love for you to call in again when Brainbug's on. If you can possibly call back next week, talk about the direwolf aspect of it. That'd be amazing. But in the meantime, we do absolutely appreciate your call.
You have to.
It's been wonderful talking to you, and please
Those
let
two
us.
calls were very painful.
Have you got any final things you'd like to say before we let you go?
No, I mean, if you like, I do have quite a bit of evidence and videos and stuff. I can send you some of that, and if you want to review.
Yeah,
later
please.
on,
That'd be amazing. Yeah, that would be really amazing.
Yeah, once I get
Just
my
for the
resources
record.
and stuff, I'll send that to you. That should be no problem.
Thank you. That's amazing, and thank you so much for your time. We'll speak to you again soon.
Why was we so nice to
You're
these
welcome.
people?
Thank you for having me.
Right?
Ben, your thoughts?
Yeah, again, there's a lot to unpack.
Love
there,
our fucking
and
pass the bag
I
to
do
you
think
because
this is
I'd had
another
enough.
Great call for Brainbug, because again, they've
Yeah,
been
this was a time
covering
when we were so
this kind of
green
thing
and we're
on-
like,
on
let's
their
be nice to
channel. So
everybody.
I want to definitely watch that episode when all these people call back in.
Yeah. You do realize Bree's going to kill me because we just keep throwing all these calls to them for next week, don't you?
Oh no, they're excited about it.
Yeah, I wanted to watch
okay,
other
so
people
we're ready
deal
for
with
the next
those
call?
callers and not
Yeah,
do it
let's do it.
myself. Yeah.
Is there a third call
Okay,
on this?
Chad,
Yeah.
are you there?
Oh,
Yeah,
dear.
I'm here. How you guys doing?
Oh dear.
Really well, thank you. How are you?
Oh no.
I'm doing well tonight. I'm doing really well.
Good. What would you like to talk about, Chad?
And be
Well,
nice
I was
because
more
Ming
or
the
less
Merciless is
wanting
asking.
to, I reached out to the show, I think last week, made some comments, and then Ethan reached out to me and encouraged me to call the show. So I figured I'd give you guys a call tonight, and I believe it was on something about how do I know that God exists?
Here we go. Here's a God
Is
call.
that what it was?
Here's a God call.
It's your call. You can talk about whatever you'd like to talk about.
Well, one of the things that it seems as though talking with atheists is they will talk about, prove that God exists. Can you show proof? And so
kind of
one of the things with that is even as a Christian myself, faith-based biblical worldview, I would claim that I have a biblical worldview. I would say that it's impossible for me to show anybody the existence of God, because faith being something that's not within us, but faith is something outside of us. And so
well, that's sticky.
One of the things that
that's very sticky. I hope we address that point, because if you're saying that faith is outside of you, and that you it sounds like you're not choosing faith, you're not choosing to believe something. So in that sense, people would not be responsible for their disbelief. So then why are they being punished for it? That's what that sounds like to me. We'll see what he says.
Ethan asked me earlier was about the presuppositional approach versus evidential. So in other words, I could sit here and try to prove evidence. I could talk to you about, and we could even look at historical sites. We can look at documents. We can look at all this stuff to try to prove evidence.
Just fucking get on with it,
but and still, and a person would still not believe all the evidence, because again, faith is something outside, not inside. So I guess
I know you want to talk about presuppositionalism, but do you consider that other stuff as evidence? Would you consider that convincing? If you didn't have this, if you were coming at it from, say, if you were an atheist, or if you were a Muslim or a Hindu or of some other tradition, and you saw that that evidence for the Christian Bible through history, through the different things that you've just mentioned, would that convince you as a non-Christian to become Christian, that evidence on its own?
Well, yeah, the evidence didn't convince me. It was something that my eyes were opened, I guess I would say. So I was given spiritual insight to see.
But do you think it
wasn't
would
something
convince
that
you?
I conjured up in my own heart or my own mind, I guess.
Chad, do you think it would convince you if you weren't a Christian?
I'm not sure. Probably not.
Right.
If it weren't, if God didn't give me the ability to have faith, no, I wouldn't have. I would probably still be left in unbelief and
no, that's fine.
People to prove.
All I wanted to do is I just wanted to establish whether you thought that evidence without that faith was good enough to convince someone. That's all I was trying to do. I wasn't trying to trip you up in any way. I just wanted to find out.
So that's
on the balance. Go on, Ben.
That's an interesting point, though. So you said that your eyes were opened and you were given the ability to have faith. Is faith something that, and you said it was outside of yourself. So do we get to choose if we have faith?
No.
So then, if there's no choice in the matter, my disbelief or my lack of faith isn't my fault.
Correct.
So then if it's not my fault, and if God's the only one that can give me the ability to have faith, then what's the point in convincing me about it or trying to?
Right. Which I kind of wonder then, even in debates, I've watched several debates, and the point is really who wins the debate. I mean, there's really no winner, I would say. Is it the person who speaks, who speaks
because
better,
you enter the debate
how do we determine who wins the debate? Because it seems as though
you already
all
picked
the
your
debates
winner.
I've watched, I've kind of walked away with, okay, both sides present their case and present, what they're saying. But then when you walk away, who really won the debate? It's almost as if the debate, no one really wins a debate. It seems like to me.
Well, a debate isn't evidence. A debate is communication. It's a battle of two people communicating, And oftentimes the winner of the debate is the person who has the best rhetoric. And rhetoric does not equal evidence. Your ability to communicate something and to convince somebody doesn't mean that you have evidence.
And
so I don't think I'd use debate as a metric for
we in kind of undergrad debate classes and stuff. When you're practicing debates, what you do is you debate topics that you're just given a topic. You're not necessarily convinced of it. You've got to try and persuade the audience to appreciate your view. So I might be given the debate topic, Donald Trump is the best president ever. And I've got to try and convince the audience of that. And regardless of my own opinions on that, if I can convince the audience, I've won the debate. So it doesn't really, the winner of a debate is not someone who has the evidence for the truth of the claim. It's exactly as young Ben said over there. It's the person who has the best rhetoric, the person who has the best argument to convince people. And that's not the same as a philosophical argument trying to ascertain the truth of things. So debates should, they're very useful. I think they're very useful. I think people should learn how to do them, especially when they're given topics that they don't agree with, and they've got to do the best to try and kind of win the debate. But they shouldn't be confused with philosophical arguments. And I think too often, especially in this sphere that we occupy, they are. I think too many people view the winner of a debate as a winner of a philosophical argument, and that's not the case.
Yeah, and the other thing too, I think like if you have two people, let's say you could have more, but let's just say you have two people who are having a discussion or having a debate and it's public and people are watching this, like just because one person had a better argument than the other one does not mean either one of them were good arguments. Like you can still outshine a shit argument and also be a shit argument.
Yeah.
But yeah, this guy.
Truth necessarily. Would you?
Well, I'm not sure. I mean, it seems as though that's what, like the existence of God or something. So a debate will be on like the existence of God. So then it'll be one person, usually the theistic person, the theist is the one trying to convince the atheist that there is a God.
I mean, yes,
right?
That's correct. Yes.
And then usually the atheist turns around and says,
"Well, just like, yeah, obvious."
No matter what.
Yeah, it's like you have the null hypothesis, which is no deity. So yeah, if you're trying to reject the null, you're trying to assert that there is something other than the no deities. So if you can make that argument, that yeah, that's why it works like that. It's clearly there's the burden of proof on one side of this discussion. Yes, you are the one trying to convince us. Do it. They're not very effective though.
Presented, they'll say, well, that there's no. They'll basically like explain it away, or they'll say, well, you really haven't proved anything. And so from me, for instance, my case would be the only thing I can share with you is what I've experienced, right? But then they'll say, well, experience is not proof, right? They'll say experience is not proof. But that's the only way I can express.
Do you think experience is? Do you think experience is good evidence?
No, because our experiences change all the time.
Right.
Like our experience and feelings constantly change. Just like science is always changes. It's always what we would say evolving, right?
I mean, kinda. I mean, science just doesn't change on kind of a whim and is less prone to making mistakes than our experiences. But I'm kind of interested in if you don't think, you know, this call is really actually because religion's my thing. So no disrespect to the other callers.
Yes,
so
it
this
is.
one's really interesting to me because you're bringing, even as a
That was a
preso,
polite
a
way of
really
saying the other
unique
calls were shit.
perspective, which I
Yeah,
really
the other calls were
appreciate.
shit. Yeah.
But if you're not convinced, if you don't think that the biblical evidence, the kind of what we'd find in history or archaeology or etc., is enough to convince you, and by your own admission, personal experience shouldn't be enough to convince you, what is it that convinces you?
That's where I would say it's God who gives us the faith, or gives someone the faith, gives someone the ability to believe. So that's where I'm saying that the faith is not within us. The faith is outside of us, and it becomes almost like put into us from an outside source. God being outside of space, time, God being eternal, God existing eternally. So he is the one who infuses or brings the faith into us to give us the ability to believe.
How can you determine the difference between what you experience and believe is God giving it you from outside and your own personal experience? What is it that differentiates those two things?
Let's see. What differentiates between what I experience and what?
Because
it's like
let me try and explain what the question is trying to address. If your experience is untrustworthy as a measure of truth, and yet you're experiencing what you believe to be faith from God, how can you differentiate the experience that you're having from the actual faith in God? Because it seems to me that even if it is, let's just say for 1 second, it is the faith in God, it is God's grace which has given you this evidence. It's that evidence is coming through as experience, and yet experience itself is not good enough to count as evidence. So outside of experience?
I guess I'd say the evidence is there first, and then the experience follows the evidence. Like when I'm on vacation and I'm sitting on the beach, for instance, and I look out over the water and I look up at the stars or the sky or whatever, the evidence is there, and then I'm like in awe, like I have this experience, like that's amazing that God, spoke this into existence. And so it's an act of worship at that point, right? I'm worshiping, I'm praising God, and I'm just amazed at his creation. So I'm responding, or I'm having some emotional response as a result of, the
not
sea or something like that. So I would say the evidence is first.
What was that?
No, I was just listening.
Oh, you're just listening. Okay, I
then my feelings or my experience follows
So
the.
That's not particularly unique to Christianity, though, is it? That feeling of awe and inspiration. Sorry, Ben.
Yes. No, I have a question. Because I love that we have two very different brains here on this panel. Because we got Richard, who really
both
likes
of them
to
are
talk about
equally
religion.
confused.
I'm a scientist, so we approach things very differently, and it's great to have
we approach the question
on it.
differently, but they're both
I have some
equally
questions
confused
for you about
and do
evidence.
not believe
so
what you're saying.
You said that you look up at the stars and that's evidence. Is evidence the same as intuition?
I would say intuition, or and that kind of goes back to the presupposition, the intuition, or what I would say our conscience. So the conscience is, and I would say that all of us are created in the image of God. So we are created in the likeness of God. So we are all created as moral creatures. We're all created with a sense of
yourself a circular argument.
Sense of awareness of God, so to speak, or like what you would say an intuition or an awareness or a conscience.
can I ask you a question? Have you ever been in a situation
Right.
where maybe you've had a friend or an acquaintance that you suspected was doing something mean to you behind your back, maybe starting some drama with somebody else, talking mean about you, doing something that wasn't great? Have you ever had something like that happen and then not really have evidence for it, but just have this feeling of, oh, I just know that something is going on, and then maybe it turned out to not be true?
Yeah.
Are there times when those intuitions and feelings
Yeah,
can
there's been times
not be
like that,
reliable?
but I just don't give a shit because it doesn't serve my
For
argument.
sure.
So then if the intuition is unreliable, how do we become confident in that? And then how do we demonstrate if it's true? If intuition can be flawed, is that good evidence?
Well, I would say, kind of going back to what you're talking about, when you're talking about like having that feeling, or our feelings can definitely lead us astray, for sure. So in other words, like for instance,
okay, yeah. So connect that with your argument.
Work, right? I get up and I go to work, or let's say you have a job and you go to work, right? You might wake up and you feel as though I don't feel like going to work, but you know do it anyway. So why do you go to work anyway?
With the caller,
why would you not live by your feelings and go to work, rather than just say, well, I don't feel like going to work, I'm going to stay in bed today.
Because I have very realistic consequences of I'm going to lose my job if I don't go, or I'm going to lose a paycheck if I don't go, or I'm going to disappoint other people who rely on me. So there are some tangible reasons I will realistically experience those consequences if I don't do that. So I don't think this is a fair analogy.
Okay. I was just trying to come up with a way to explain it, I guess.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Okay. Whatever.
What I'm trying to say is our feelings can our feeling. We need to. What I would say is
our feelings are wrong.
With objective.
Yeah, like our feelings are wrong. So connect that with the argument.
I align my feelings.
Might be my feeling of God is wrong.
It's true.
So if the intuition isn't reliable, then how do we? I guess at first I should ask, what is your confidence that what you're saying is true?
My confidence would be in the scripture.
So how confident on a scale of 1 to 100% would you say
my confidences are in the scripture? Like, what the fuck does that mean?
Reality?
That scripture is reality?
That any of this,
it's not a hard question.
Faith is outside of us, that God is real. What's your confidence level in that?
Oh, I would say 100%.
So if intuition is not reliable, how did we get to 100%? That seems a little high, isn't it?
Denial.
Well, because are you saying intuition is the same thing as feelings?
Methodologies so far, and on every single occasion is like said, yeah, actually, I agree with you. That's not a good way of doing it. But yet, he's still got 100% confidence.
Yeah. Yikes.
I'm saying intuition it can be feelings. It's essentially relying on a pattern or relying on a thought that you have instead of relying on demonstrable evidence.
I guess I would say that part of that intuition would be something that God has created us with. So with the ability to, obviously, if you go into a place, right? You've probably driven down a road where you don't feel comfortable, right? You feel like
my intuition told me that Hanuman actually did think the sun was a mango,
right? That's your
and
intuition. I think that's the way that God wired us to be able to be aware of that, right? So in that sense, I would say, yeah, you should probably get out of that area if you don't feel comfortable and follow your intuition.
But let's say
feelings seem to me a little bit different. Like I have a bad feeling about this or something. You know what I'm saying?
But are there times when intuition is? We already established that intuition can be wrong sometimes. But there are times, right, that having a flawed intuition can hurt people, right?
For sure, yeah.
So
He
then,
agrees with us again.
should I rely solely on that intuition, or should I take further steps to evaluate if my intuition is correct or not?
You should probably take further steps in evaluating if it's correct or not.
Great.
So how would I do that in this case?
Great. You do that.
I guess
caller.
you would have to ask your reason. You'd probably have to ask yourself, why am I feeling this way, or why is this coming upon me?
Okay. So then after you ask yourself, are there any other ways you can evaluate it? Because it sounds like, I mean, human brains aren't the best all the time. We have bias. We interject things that shouldn't be there. Should we talk
Correct.
to other people? Is there a standardized method that we could gather information that would confirm our intuition or not confirm our intuition?
Yeah, I would definitely. Now, in Scripture, for instance, it says there's wisdom in a multitude of counselors. In other words, what a good idea would be to take what your intuition is telling you and talk to several other individuals and then get confirmation. So, in other words, maybe you talk to 10 different people, which that would be the wisdom of a multitude.
You talk
of
to
counselors.
10
So you
people
talk to 10
specifically
people,
within the religion
and maybe
who will
10
confirm
people
your
confirm
bias.
that, yeah, that sounds like a good
Instead
idea.
of going to people
I would
who are
probably
not
go with
in
that.
religion.
Or
Would you
9 out of 10
consider
say that's a completely stupid idea?
would you consider that advice from Scripture as exceptional advice and in itself evidence that what you're thinking is true, just because it has come from Scripture?
I'm sorry, can you say that? Can you repeat that
If-
again? I'm trying to process what you're asking.
Yeah, you're saying that you're taking from Scripture this advice that you talk to other people. Would you say that's unique to Christianity and therefore evidence of Christianity because it's in the Christian Scriptures?
I would say, is it unique to Christianity?
Your comments in
Probably
the
not,
side chat.
but I would say that
That is
any
the
other
correct answer.
truth
Yeah.
I would say pretty much if there's truth to be found in anything, I could pretty much go back to Scripture and find it in Scripture. So I'm saying that Scripture is the source of all truth. So even in other religions or other ideas or whatever, or even in science, there is truth. But when you follow that truth, I could basically show you in Scripture where that truth is
I
found,
bet
because
you
I would say
can't.
all truth leads us back to.
This is the kind of person who you could share a passage from a completely different religion and he would not recognize what religion it's from.
Yeah,
Like
absolutely.
he'd agree with something and say it's Christian and it could be something from the Quran.
I
and he
did
would
this
have no
as an
idea.
exercise a few years ago before I did any of the call-in shows in the old kind of forum days. There used to be a BBC forum on religion where people had these kinds of discussions. And I actually wrote down passages from the Bible, from the Quran, and from the Tipitaka. And the only changes I made was that I changed anything that kind of made it obvious what it was from to God. So if it was from the Quran, I changed the word Allah to God. If it was from Tipitaka, I changed the word Dharma to God. And I put a list of, I don't know how many there were, 10 maybe, verses from different holy books. And I asked people to comment what religion they thought they were from. And virtually everybody got them wrong. Because they all appeared to be from what. So if a Muslim was responded, they would answer the Quran. If a Christian responded, they would answer the Bible. And they all got them wrong because they are so similar, and it's so easy to to kind of do exactly what you've just said, and that is present religious scripture to someone who's not familiar with the scripture, and present it in such a way that it appears that it's from their religion, and they will fully accept it.
Yeah. I would have loved if I went on that path with this caller. I think like definitely we're at a place where we're so new to this stuff that we're just like tippy-toeing around stuff. We could have easily backed this guy into a corner so early on in this discussion.
God being the source of truth.
Okay.
But which God? Because if we can trace that back in the Quran, or we can trace that back in the Tipitaka of Buddhism, or the Vedas of Hinduism,
here we go.
I just said
then how do you differentiate which is the correct source, if any of them?
I would say it goes back to the truth of Jesus being God. When
But
he
you're
said,
relying
"I
on
am
that
the
Jesus
way,
is
the
God."
truth, and the life." There's no
But
other
we're-
way to the Father or to, except through me. I would say it
Well,
goes
that's handy.
back to Christ.
But
as
Chad,
being
you're
the source
relying
of
on the
truth. So when I
scripture.
say,
Chad, you're relying on the Christian scriptures to tell you that, and we've already established that the Christian scriptures aren't reliable
Right.
as a source of truth in and of themselves. And we can find,
but then what I
we can find kind of comparable things in the other religious traditions. So how do we differentiate?
Right. So when I look at other religions or whatever religion, I would say, who do they say that Jesus is? Is he just a good teacher? Was he
Why?
a moral example?
Why would
Was
you
he
bring
Why
just
do you care what
another
Jesus
prophet? But if
But
you
why-
look at
why-
any other religion, every other religion will
Chad-
say that Jesus is not God.
Chad, when you seem to kind of be missing the point here a little bit. Jesus is irrelevant in this because Jesus is part of what you believe. So if you've got the Christian scriptures saying Jesus is God, and you've got the Quran saying
Right.
Allah is God, and you've got the Tipitaka saying essentially there is no creator God, but there is this other set of things which is the truth, and they're all using the same evidential processes. They're all saying, you can cross-reference it, talk to other people to back up your feelings. In the Tipitaka, the Buddhist texts, in the Mahaparinirvana Sutta, it says,
I want you to pronounce
the Buddha is
those
asked on
words
his
well
deathbed
wasted.
how you
That's
will
really
check
what I
the
want you to
truth.
do on Holy
And
Spirit.
he literally says, those feelings you have inside yourself, that experience, you cross-reference it with what I've taught you
Try to speak
and the
Sanskrit
community
well
around
wasted.
you.
Or whatever.
Pali,
So
I
if
can
we can
Nepali.
certainly
take
throw
what
some
you're saying
Pali
as
out
an
at you.
evidential
I've got
basis.
actually, just bear with me 1 second because I'm not sure. I've just rearranged my bookshelf and I'm not sure where it is at the moment. I have a I'm not sure where it is. I'll have to pull it out on the show. But I have got an actual Pali Sanskrit Pali chanting book with all the chants and the ritual chants that are all in Pali.
And
So
Pali,
we'll
nice.
on that show we'll have to read some of those out and kind
yeah.
of. But I'll send them to you beforehand as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll take turns in reciting verse after verse after verse.
Oh yes. And then I know for mine, when I do some Hindu stories, I'm going to be reciting the Hindu prayers while wasted. I'm going to try to sing them correctly, and it's going to be.
You've got an advantage because you speak a little bit.
I speak Hindi, but I don't know Sanskrit, so
Okay.
and I'm not going to remember the words. But it'll be funny. So I'm excited, but definitely I'm excited for some Buddhist stories as well. It's going to be nonsense.
They are.
We can as equally say everything in Buddhism is as true as everything in Christianity, using the evidential basis that you're giving us. So we can disregard Jesus because what we're talking about is the way we're assessing evidence. So it doesn't matter about Jesus so much. It's the kind of yardstick that you're using as evidence. So what you're saying is evidence for Christianity.
This was 3
outside of
years ago,
Christianity
people,
can
and
be
Christians
equally.
still make this mistake all the time. All of the time. They use this, they essentially special plead for Christianity. They use the same methodology, which if you simply applied it to Islam or you applied it to Buddhism or Hinduism, would prove those religions true in their minds if they use that methodology.
Yeah. How are you doing on time? I know we're almost at 2 hours.
I'm good. I can go as long as you want me to go.
Okay. I figure I don't know if this is the last. I'm gonna guess that this is the last call. We might finish this call and then call it. I'm gonna stand up again real briefly. If you need to get up for a bathroom break or a drink break or something.
I'm good. I mean, there's half an hour of the show left. Maybe not pause it and just talk over it. We might get to the end.
Yeah. All right. I'll just click the play button then.
Viable for something else. So we're still no closer to assessing whether Christianity is the truth. All we've got is it convinces an individual because of the teachings it gives. Now we know that for all religions, it still gets us no closer to the actual truth, which is I would think you're equally as invested in as me and Ben are. We all want to know what the truth is. So how would you differentiate between them? What outside of the Christian scriptures and outside your own feelings is there where you can assess and say, this is what leads me to truth? Because it seems at the minute you're just relying on something which we can just put in. Let's say we've got 3 holes. One is Christianity, one is Islam, and one is Buddhism.
Going then with that.
We've got 3 holes, and the man standing next to each of the holes is saying, "Jump down my hole. It is the truth, and here is the evidence." And all the evidence is that person saying, "This is the truth. This is the evidence." How do we decide which hole to jump into?
How do I mean, and that kind of goes back to my original comment that I can't prove to you, I can't give you evidence. It would have to be God would show you the truth. So in other words, the truth comes from outside of us, inside, and He's the one who reveals the truth to us.
So I have a question here. Going along with this, so if this Bible is the truth, and it is the best representation of the truth, would I be able to manipulate this reality that we're living in and be able to see similar things that we see in the scriptures? Is what we see in the scriptures demonstrable in this reality?
For sure.
Are there ways that we could? Are there ways we could measure that? Could I design some kind of project where we tested if we could observe those same things?
No, because that's where that kind of goes back into that thing of faith, right? Faith, because even you can't manufacture faith, so you can't create something to give someone faith.
But why do we need to add something else? If that book is truth, it should be the same truth that I'm experiencing right now. So I should be able to see similar observations in this reality that we do in the scriptures. So why do we need to add another layer to it?
I don't think we need to.
And I agree with you.
We disagree on what layer
that's the scientific
we're
method, right?
Excluding.
So, like, what would be a scientific method? What do you mean? What would be a scientific method?
What would be a scientific
method? So we had
method?
an observation, or we had a question that we wanted to test, or that we wanted to evaluate for truth, and then we set up a scenario where we could explore if the things that we see in the book are consistent with the same things that we see in reality. And then we can calculate some statistics and show, okay, this does line up or this doesn't line up. Right? Could we do something like that?
I could present a case to you, but whether you agree with me or not, that might be a different situation.
It shouldn't matter if we agree with you. That's the beauty of the scientific method. The scientific method it doesn't always work because we have bias, but the scientific method should, in theory, see what I did there? It should kind of give us an independent yardstick which discounts what our personal feelings are. As a good skeptic, as a good scientist, our own feelings on a subject should be irrelevant because the data should be there to show us. And I think that's what Ben's trying to get at. There should be data. If we have this yardstick of science or of the scientific method, it gives us data independent of our own feelings, where we can all say objectively, this is the truth.
Okay, so if I give you a scenario, could you explain it scientifically for me?
It depends on the scenario and studies.
What are we
studies involve a lot more work besides
what does he want
finding a pattern. I feel like a lot of people equate science with finding a pattern and going along with it. But patterns are very deceiving, which is why we have things like statistics. So you could give me a scenario and I could run some calculations, or we could put a scenario to a test, but I don't think I could give you a set answer right now.
Look at young Ben just running calculations off top of his head.
Yeah, I'd like to hear it, to be fair.
I feel like, we're going to do everyone's statistics for them right now instead of making them do it for me and bring them.
And you might have heard about this.
I was ready. I was ready for that numerology guy that called in to talk Ethan like a few weeks ago. I was totally ready to do the calculations for him right then and there, but he provided me no numbers to do that with. So it's like, and then you just add 32 to whatever. Like, okay, but what numbers are we adding 32?
He was great. I sent that. I think if it's the one I'm thinking of, I sent that paper to Scott Dickey, by the way. And
oh yeah, that was the one.
And Scott was like, "This is nonsense." It's like outright, this paper's just nonsense.
And again, that was the time that I wish Scott was on the show, because like this guy's bringing numerology to us. I'm like, this is really a Scott call. Like, this is where Scott would be very effective. But yeah,
come on, hit that play button.
Let's do it.
A 15-year-old student went into school, which is actually right down the road from where I live, and shot up the school, killed 4 students.
What the fuck?
Did you hear about that?
What the fuck? What the fuck?
On the news?
Yes, I did hear about that.
I mean, I didn't, but I'm 5,000 miles away, so.
There's me being witty again.
It was a school shooting where a kid went in, premeditated, went in and shot students, 11 students shot, 4 killed. So why did that happen?
Because the person was being
because
shitty.
Now the aftermath is a lot of people are asking, why did this happen, or who's to blame, or they're
the
looking
person
for
who
answers.
did the action
so
is
what
to
would
blame.
Science say to give someone comfort or help someone to answer that situation?
I don't think comfort is relevant here. It's not about comfort. People make decisions. People do things, and they're not always good. The world has events that happen that don't need to have a significant meaning or a level of comfort for it to be true.
So what? Okay, so take people wanting comfort out of that equation, but people are saying why. So what would science
Let me
say?
ask
Why
a question
did this
about
happen?
comfort, and then just say, "Oh, let's just take
what
that
would
out."
the conclusion be if you followed science?
Some molecules in someone's brain were in a certain place at a certain time, and a person made a decision, and they acted on it, and consequences happened. I don't see where supernatural fits into this.
And then we
No,
can
we
hold
have
the
we have a
we will,
legal system
whether or
which
not it
deals with
exists
cases like this all
from a
the time
naturalistic
and comes up
perspective.
with reasons as to why these
But
things
the
actually
caller's
happen.
not ready for that.
That's why we have criminal
caller's
investigations
definitely not
and
ready for that.
convictions.
Right, for sure. And so when I look biblically, I mean, obviously the reason that God gave the government to us is to punish evildoers. So that's where capital punishment comes into play. But from a biblical perspective, I would say that he was influenced because in the report he was saying, I'm hearing voices in my head, and saying that there's demons in my home and things like this. So what I would say is that would be because of all of us are born as sinners. So he sinned in doing this, and he acted out of anger. And so
We
the
let
result
this
is
guy
that he
get
was
away with
probably
so
influenced
much.
by a demonic spirit.
Hold on. This is problematic. Hold on. So I don't want to get into the weeds on this because I really do not want to perpetuate a stigma that people with schizophrenia are demon possessed. That's something that has harmed people in the past and have ostracized people from society for having psychiatric conditions, which we can demonstrate relates to a concentration of dopamine in the brain. And so I don't know if I want to go down this road for the sake of the audience.
The only point I was making is that I think that biblically there's reasons to why this happened that we can look in scripture and we can find reasons. So
we have reasons outside of the Bible. Chad, we have reasons outside of the Bible. We have a shared reality that we can all agree on.
Biblically, the Bible is biblically the truth, and biblically it is true. I don't know if you remember that caller on every show who called in, the guy, I don't know if it's from Australia or New Zealand, who just used biblically as an excuse for everything.
Yeah, it doesn't work. It doesn't work that way. Oh, because I'm going to start saying like canonically. I'll just start adding Lee to every book out there, and then they will, according to this, yeah. Get ready. That's my new argument.
Again, respecting that. Ben, I don't want to kind of go into it too much, but let's say we have a shared reality. We know that people.
Let's say we have a shared reality.
That people's brains can not, sometimes don't work correctly, or sometimes have imbalances which cause them to go a little bit out. We know that. Ben knows that. I know that. You know that. That is a shared reality. There's no need to add something on top of it
whether
to
or not
say,
we have a shared reality.
But it could have been this external thing as well. We don't need that because we've already got this shared reality that we all agree on. So it's not particularly a good example that you're using because we've got a foundation that we all agree on. People do suffer from mental illness.
And think about it this way. If we start labeling people with a mental illness that they can't control, if we start labeling it as demon possession, and then we move forward and act on that label that we've assigned them, that could really hurt people, right?
I mean, even the mental illness
going back to
argument throws a huge wrench
who can't
in
control them. So if he couldn't control himself,
assigning
why
responsibility
is he held
for certain things
in the court of law?
It
Why
takes
is
away
he going
from
to do life in
original
prison?
sin?
I'm not
responsible.
I'm not here to debate the legal system. I'm not an attorney. That's not my place or expertise to argue about. But here's the thing: if we slapped a label of demon possession on somebody with a mental illness that we know we can manage, things like schizophrenia and psychotic episodes can often be managed with medication. We can correct these imbalances in the brain and people can live normal lives. So we have answers to this through science. And if I were to say that the answer is that this person is demon possessed, I probably would not take the steps to diagnose somebody with an illness or try to find a treatment for them, help them integrate into society and have a productive life. So missing on that would cause serious damage to this person and potentially to other people. So there's a point where we can't just run with the intuition, and we need to investigate further. These are people's lives on the line.
So let me ask you this. So do you think that science and what I would say scripture, or, scripture or morale, I would say scripture. So do you think that then science and God can work together as opposed to them being like set apart? It seems as though it's either science or God. So do you think that
I think
they work together, or do you think they're separate?
I think science should be used to demonstrate, because science is a methodology. It's not an ideology. It's a method for finding truth. I think we could use science to demonstrate the claims in the scriptures, and if they can be demonstrated, I would be convinced. I'm sure Richard would be convinced.
Yeah, and
but that hasn't happened yet.
No, and a lot of in fact, most of the early Middle Eastern archaeology was from people who were trying to prove God. They were believers, and they were going out and doing this extensive work to say that the Bible was true. But unfortunately, as the work progressed, there just wasn't the evidence there. And that's a way in which science and religion were working together, but the scientific method showed that actually what religion
There's
was
also
saying
negative
wasn't
evidence in
consistent
archaeology
with reality.
for the Bible.
And
what
so we don't have to look at them. And I certainly wouldn't
in a
look
certain
at
place
science and
is
religion
not
as
there.
opposing.
If the Bible was
some of the
true,
greatest scientists in the world
then
are
we would expect to find certain artifacts, certain pottery, certain evidence of a certain people at a certain time. And we don't find it in that layer of archaeology. That is negative evidence. That is a thing.
Mhm.
Negative evidence is a thing. It's the same thing that philosophically we can use to say we can prove a negative. A lot of, I'm going to pick on atheists for a moment because we've kind of been having to go at the callers here a lot. But a lot of atheists say you can't prove a negative. You can prove a negative. You can
It's
prove
just
one.
hard.
It's
But
hard,
yeah, you
but there are
can.
methods in which we can do it. There are philosophical methods. There are physical methods in science that we can use to do it. And archaeology is one of them places where archaeologists will say we expect to find if our assumption is true, we expect to find this layer in this particular layer of soil to say that this there is evidence of this people at this time. And when they dig down and that layer is not there, that is negative evidence. It proves a negative that those people were not there at that time as expected. And there were a couple of Israel, I think it's Israel Finkelstein. He's got a book called The Bible Unearthed. And in that, it talks of a couple of places where in the Middle East, where in the Bible, it talks about certain stories and certain things happening at a certain time in a certain place. And the archaeology, and this is what I was referring to on this, the archaeologists went out and they went out expecting to find a certain thing, and that thing was not there. That is evidence that that event did not happen. That is negative evidence, and it's a real thing. It counts as evidence. And when a lot of people say the Bible is true, archaeology proves the Bible, we can point to these certain places. It's not everywhere, but we can point to certain places that show that this is not the case.
Yeah, for sure.
These religious. Callers. You don't have to, you can separate your faith from the scientific method. I mean, to me, that's kind of flawed because you're leaving skepticism aside, but that's a whole different conversation. But science and religion do work together.
So let me ask you one more question, if I could. it seems as though a lot of atheists are very anti-religion and hate religion, as though they just completely despise
Yes.
religion. And I'm just curious
Because it's
as to why
shitty to
do
people.
you think an atheist, because I'm not going to try to blanket all atheists, but why would an atheist be totally despised to the concept of religion, as though their goal in life is to eradicate the entire world of any type of religion, as though all religion is totally negative and bad and should be completely wiped out?
That's a complex question.
Have you read your Bible?
You're certainly talking to one atheist who doesn't despise religion. Most of those books behind me are religious books. I'm doing a degree in religion, philosophy, and ethics. So I certainly don't despise religion. I've got a lifelong passion for religion and religious cultures and things, and anthropology. So yeah, you're certainly talking to one who doesn't. But there are people who've been abused by religion and who've come out of it, and who religion has done real harm to them. And I'm not talking specifically about Christianity, all religions. People have come out of, they've had these experiences. And, in those situations, the left, especially when they first come out of it, they're left with kind of a bitter taste in the mouth, understandably so, as any abused person would be. And that,
I agree.
that is pent up anger and aggression. And, Ben probably can speak on that more than I can. So, I'll shut up and let him talk.
Well, it's not the religion itself necessarily that's the problem. It's the consequences of the religion. And just like we were talking about with schizophrenia and mental illness, we have a whole history of people being harmed by religious thinking.
Right.
And we saw this with example, demon possession, people with schizophrenia, people with epilepsy, people with viral infections that cause neurological symptoms, things that people have no control over, have been labeled in the past as demon possessed, or they've been labeled as sinners that need to be eradicated. People have been harmed, and they continue to be harmed. We're seeing now people utilizing religious ideology to promote transphobia and to promote conversion therapy. And so there are real harms coming from it. So it's not that every religious person is a bad person, or that the religion itself necessarily is the problem. It's the way people think about the world and the actions they take on other people because of those beliefs. And so that's, I think, where a lot of the conflict comes from. I think if a person decided to believe that Jesus was real and they didn't make decisions on behalf of anybody else because of that, I don't think many people would be bothered by it.
No,
Okay. Just in closing, go ahead.
No, go on. I was just going to wrap it up. So I'll let you have the last word.
I was just going to say, even myself, being a Christian, I've seen a lot of abuse in churches, and I've seen a lot of abuse within the name of God, and in religion, and even people, that I personally know. And I definitely am disgusted by it too. So I agree that it's a terrible thing to see anybody be abused in the name of God or any type of religion. And I totally stand against that. So I'm with you on that. So I appreciate you guys taking my call tonight, and we were kind of all over the place, but man, I enjoyed the conversation.
I'm going to go on the record and say you are my favorite Prezo of all time.
Oh,
because
same.
you're so open
you still
to
believe
conversation,
that,
and
yes.
When I found out we had a Prezo on,
yeah, because most of them are shits.
I think that's the end of that call. So I think that's kind of the end of the interesting parts of the show. So for debrief, that was
debrief. We're going into debrief. It was that arduous that we have to have a debrief from it.
Right? Yeah, that was a lot. How do you feel after watching that?
No, they weren't the best calls. We were very green, obviously very, very green.
Mm-hmm.
I do want to express gratitude to Ethan, and I'm sure you feel this way as well, Ben, for giving us both a shot. This was my first call-in show. I think it was your first call-in show, and Ethan gave a lot of people a chance. You look at the people who came through the books. You've got kind of obviously me and you. You've got Kenneth Leonard. You've got Bree McCune. You've got Secular Rarity. Cynthia McDonald was a producer on the show. The names are there just to kind of show just what kind of traction this had. Ethan gave people an opportunity that other places wouldn't give. And he, I will be eternally grateful for what he did and the kind of time. And I speak like he's no longer with us. He's alive and well.
He's here. He's just not streaming.
But yeah, the perspective was a great show. And when you're doing this, I said earlier on in the evening, I've been having these conversations with religious people for 30 odd years, but each time you come onto a new format, you have to learn a new skill set. And we were green. We were green, and there's no getting away from it. And anybody who's watching this tomorrow night, me and Ben are going to be hosting Talk Heathen. And if you watch tomorrow's show and side by side with this show, you will see just how much we've both grown just from experience. But and Ethan was kind enough to give many people that first kind of step up, that first rung on the ladder, and I will be eternally grateful for him for that. It was a great show. It really was. The calls on this particular one, not the best. We started off slow. We did what Gorilla Monsoon in the old wrestling days would have accused Greg the Hammer Valentine of doing, and starting off slow and finding his pace 45 minutes into a match. And I think that's what we did here. We got better as the show went along. But the calls weren't the best. We did what we could do with them. And that's kind of my take on it. Ben?
Yeah, no, we've definitely improved a lot since then. And I think it's interesting because I think my perspective my perspective on things has changed since we've started doing shows. And I think you get into this space and you hear all of the arguments from people in our own community saying, why can't these call-in show hosts be nicer to callers? Why can't they do it this way? And you have your own ideas of what makes a good call-in show host. And so you go in, I think, to your first couple shows so worried about, am I going to be the mean one? Am I going to be how am I going to be perceived on this platform talking to people?
Especially on the perspective, because the perspective was kind of known as being a nice show where Ethan kind of valued, and rightly so. It's something we continue to this day on Talk Heathen. But Ethan valued having hosts on there who were respectful to the callers and kind to the callers.
Yeah, and I think it's learning that balance of being charitable listeners, to the callers, but also not letting them smuggle in shit, not letting them get away with problematic ideas. And I think some of the time that can be taken as mean, it can be taken as confrontational, but there are plenty of times where you have to interrupt them. A couple of the callers on here, we should have interrupted them sooner. We should not have let them monologue that long. And there are kind ways to do that for sure. But then there are people who will call in with very, very twisted ideas of the value of humanity. And it's if someone's advocating for racism, sexism, transphobia, etc., if they're advocating for bad ideas, we should be aggressive with them. We should not coddle those people. And I think like I've changed my mind on a lot of things. Like I've been less focused on how nice can I be to this person, but like actually focusing on the discussion. And it's okay to be rough with people when you need to be.
When I think of this kind of stuff, I always, or I've learned. I don't want to say I've always done it, but I've learned to meet the callers where they're at. And I always try and present that to prospective callers who I'm kind of engaging with, people who might call the show, who say, because a lot of people say, you know, we've seen these shows, we've seen these kinds of shows before. You kind of railroad the callers, you shout at the callers, you mean to the callers, you don't let them speak. And I always say to those people, we meet you where you're at. If you are coming in and you want a genuine conversation and you're willing to have that conversation, we will have that conversation. I think that the show with me and the Talk Heathen with me and Emma Thorne a couple of weeks ago was a perfect example of this. The first two callers were Christian callers. Not a voice was raised during the whole thing. You know, there was lots of thank yous and it was polite, but we had that thing that we didn't have on this show we've just reviewed, where we were willing to step in and we were willing to cut them off if we needed it, but it wasn't aggressive. But if calls come in aggressive, we can do that. And that's so that skill set comes with experience of knowing when and where to do a certain thing and when and where to cut them off and how to cut them off. And you know, we've both, you know, this show we've just reviewed was 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, we've both had, none of us have taken any time off in that time. We've had 3 years of experience to build that skill set up. And, you know, I think it shows. And I do think it shows. But to any prospective people who might be coming into hosting calling shows, don't be put off if you do your first few and you're thinking, I didn't handle that well. We still make mistakes to this day. It's a hard thing to do.
It's so hard.
Absolutely.
And even like just putting yourself out there is a lot. And I think like most reputable shows, like if you're gonna be out there trying your hand at Truth Wanted, if you're gonna try your hand at some other shows, like they're not gonna throw you on with somebody who doesn't know what they're doing. And I think that's something too that like even though like Ethan platformed a lot of different people, like if someone was brand new to something, like they would not be hosting the show by themselves. Like, I mean, nobody would be. But like they'd be with somebody who'd at least done it a few times before that, who could like take the reins if that person, you know, had a panic attack mid episode or something. Like people aren't going to be throwing you out to the wolves. Like it'll be okay. It might suck. It might be painful. You might go back and rewatch it years later and be like, why did I say that? But most of the time people are going to be, you know, understanding that it's hard. It's hard to do these shows. It's hard to do them well. So
yeah, absolutely. Can I just obviously we're gonna advertise.
Yeah, we'll wrap up
before we go. But before I do that, can I just say to everybody, I believe, I hope I'm not wrong in this, that AJ, one of our good friends, AJ, is going to be on Neil Bernstein's show in about half an hour's time. I won't be awake to watch it. I will be in bed because it's getting late over here, but I will definitely be watching the rerun of it. And you know, if you get a chance to go and watch it live, I think it's in about half an hour. Go and watch that live. Because AJ is cool, Neil is cool. I've been on Neil's show before. I love Neil to bits. I love AJ to bits. Go and watch AJ on there because it's going to be a good one, and I can't wait to watch that.
Yeah, so we'll definitely wrap up here because I want you all to go get ready for Neil's. Actually, let me real quick get the link for that, and then I'll put it in the side chat, and then we'll wrap it up as soon as I. Here, here's the regular episode, and then there's an after party afterwards. So if you're around, everybody can, of course, like go to the regular show, and then after that there is the after show. So hold on, where am I at? I can't find us. I left the video for a second, and then now I'm trying to find it. Here we go.
And,
Okay.
and I believe they're talking about Lego, which I talked about as well with Neil. And to all you Americans out there, I have a bone to pick with you, by the way, on that very subject. While I've got a platform and a voice, the plural of Lego is Lego. It's not Legos. Lego is translated as play well. That's the original word meaning. It's not Legos, it's Lego. So if you're saying multiple Lego, it is still Lego. That's my bone. That is I have picked, and that is all I have to say on the subject.
Cool. With that, we will call it a night. Thank you so much, Richard, for being here.
Absolutely, anytime.
Yeah, we'll see you all over at Neil's. Bye, everybody.